So in this video, we're going to be talking about kind of the maybe inconsistencies coming out of the EU. I mean, the EU might have changed strategy within the space of a few days, but who knows? What's going on here. I don't know if this is a feint from the EU just to see what the British reaction would be. It's very, very confusing in all honesty. And so if we look here, so this is from Michel Barnier. This is the EU's negotiator, one of the top dons basically, in terms of trying to get a deal. So Brussels has said is willing to hammer out a compromise with Britain on the sensitive issue of a level playing field. So a level playing field is basically like having similar regulations when it comes to workers' rights, environmentalism. So if one country has lower standards, it means that they have a competitive edge because they can force their workers to do say more hours for less pay compared to say workers in Germany who get paid more, therefore they produce less things. Well, I guess that's debatable about productivity, but say for example it is real. Say a company would be more likely to set up in the UK because they can pay the workers less. But there is the idea that happy workers are more productive workers, but I digress. That's not important here. So Brussels has said, sorry for background noise, mom just come back from work. Brussels said it's willing to hammer out a compromise with Britain on the sensitive issue of a level playing field, rules for businesses in a sign of how positions are shifting ahead of intensive EU-UK future relationship talks, which start next week. So this article from June the 24th. Yes. So Barnier said Barnier, the EU chief negotiator, has said his team were willing to work with Britain on one credible operational framework for the so-called level playing field commitments. These aim to ensure close alignment, so that you don't need exact alignment, but you want something that's close enough between the two sides: state aid, environmental protections, and employment regulations. So there's one thing I mentioned there with employment regulations, and obviously environmental stuff. You don't want a country that can just dump stuff into the water and not deal with things properly as a cost-cutting measure, because that puts them at a competitive edge. And obviously state aid. So say for example, if we're competing in the steel manufacturing industries, what if the UK just helped these steel companies in the UK? That would put them at a competitive edge with steel companies in the EU, for example. However, Barnier insisted the EU would not allow anything to jeopardise the integrity of the single market. We are ready on this point as well on the issue of fishing issue governance and some other issues where we are divergent. We are ready to work on landing zones respecting the mandate of the EU, said Barnier in a webcast organised by the EU Policy Centre think tank. We are ready to work on an operational and clever compromise, but never at the price of any unravelling of the single market. So what he's saying is there is some leeway to give here, but it will not come at the cost of the single market. So meanwhile, Boris Johnson on Wednesday convened senior ministers to discuss potential scope for compromise with the EU ahead of resumption of intensified talks on June 29th. British officials say Mr Johnson would consider a compromise where the UK would maintain the right to deviate from common standards in areas such as state aid, but would accept the right of Brussels to impose tariffs in retaliation. So if the UK did deviate standards, so employment standards, so if it comes to steel, for example, then the EU can put tariffs on UK steel. The idea viewed in Brussels as a recipe for constant friction in the relationship, but it reflects a newfound flexibility. So what Brussels would be saying is, that's going to cause a lot of problems because then, they have to, slap a tariff on with the UK, and obviously I think it might cause WTO problems because it may not be covered in a deal. For example, I'm not 100% sure on that, but what we can tell is what the UK is saying is, look, we want the ability to diverge from standards, and then if you want to stick tariffs on, go ahead. And so that causes more problems for the EU because it puts them in the dilemma of, do we want to import cheaper products from the UK, which will help, consumers in the domestic market, but impact workers and manufacturers in the domestic market. So it's very tricky for them to actually figure out, whether it's worth sticking on tariffs and how much the tariff should be. And that will cause further friction in the future if we did follow this model. So if we go to our next article here, so Merkel said the UK must live with the consequences of weaker ties to the EU. So Angela Merkel has said the UK will have to live with the consequences of Boris Johnson ditching Theresa May's plan to maintain close economic ties with the EU after Brexit. Merkel has said, hardening her tone over the prospect of a no-deal scenario at the end of the year. So after more than 3 years in which the German Chancellor repeatedly emphasised her openness to a deal that would maintain the UK's current flow of trade with the bloc, she suggested the door leading to such a compromise has now closed. She's saying it's done, it's over. So she said, "We need to let go of the idea that it is for us to define what Britain should want." Which she's absolutely right. We're the ones leaving. We're the ones who has to, we're the ones who have to come up with a deal. It's not up to them to tell us what, they have to tell us what they want, but it's more up to us to tell us what we want, so they can say, no, that's not going to happen, or okay, there's something here. So we need to let go of the idea that it's for us to define what Britain should want. Merkel has said. That is for Britain to decide, and the EU27 will respond appropriately. Speaking days before Germany takes over the EU rotating presidency, the Merkel has said, has made clear that her priority was, instead of pushing through a pandemic rescue plan to stop Europe's economy sliding into a worse slump since the 1930s. So she's saying we've got bigger things to deal with because the pandemic is playing havoc with EU countries. Coming in the week of the 4th anniversary of Brexit referendum, the change of rhetoric has come. With Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, and the British government wanting to define for itself what relationship it will have with us after the country leaves. So basically, it's up to Johnson to decide what the relationship is, and it's up for the EU to decide if they're okay with this. It will have to then live with the consequences, of course. That is to say, with less closely interconnected economies. So she's saying that if you do deviate standards, essentially, the our economies will become less intertwined, and less trade will happen as a result of that. If Britain does not want to have rules on the environment and the labour market or social standards that compare to those of the EU, our relations will be less close. That will mean it does not want standards to go on developing along parallel lines. And so what she wants is British regulations to stay lockstep with the EU, so that there's not a competitive edge. So I don't know if this is a feint from both of them. So Barnier saying, there's a potential for a deal here, but Barnier wants to see how far the UK would go with in terms of keeping a level playing field. And if this is Merkel saying, bro, we ain't going to do that, that's a joke. Or if Merkel's saying, nah, you can't do that, like you will have to live with the consequences of any deviation from EU standards. And so it's very hard to know which one is, a real, which one's a real blow and which one's a feint coming in, and how much leeway they actually give the UK. And so look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.